Hello. So, something about me is that I was born in 1990, and I recently have been watching the World War II history that Netflix has. So I was watching that on Netflix, World War II history in color, and looking at that and looking at the detail of the story, of the narrative, of the events that unfolded. And what I was doing is really relating to the information, relating to the story as it unfolded in real time, which is how they presented it. And I want to say that looking in my life, I was born at basically the time where the Soviet Union collapsed, and I grew up in the 90s, and I didn't have this idea, or let's say this fear of nuclear bombing or like an arms race where another country could bomb you, like the idea of a country, our country being at war, or even the war really being at war. There wasn't that point of threat. And me growing up as a child of the 90s, and growing and then seeing how, of course, the history of humanity, how humanity's been very warlike, has been always in a constant state of war. There's always been an enemy. And so in this way, it's like a really different perspective that I have, and in trying to understand that the idea of people willing to go to war, willing to be aggressive or callous, or that kind of mentality. And I suppose in a sense of, I guess, a more grander scale, I suppose. And so looking at, for example, the events within the Netflix series on World War II, it was interesting to see how the events, as they unfolded in real time, it gives you the sense of people always being constantly surprised, where you can look back in history and say, oh man, this person made such a huge mistake, but really it was a point of, well, a very human, let's say, emotions, very human aspects of simply being emotional, simply having a belief that really you held on to. And I'm not talking about in a very broad sense, I'm talking about really specific expectations, like there's no way that Germany is gonna push an advance into this country. Oh, they did it. Well, we don't want to do war again, so we're not going to threaten, we're not going to do anything, we're just going to kind of allow it to happen. Oh, there's no way that they're going to do this, they're going to push here and get more land there. Okay. Kind of, and there's different stories of these different people, characters involved, of one person trying to find peace, of trying to sign a letter of peace with Hitler, and Hitler just going against his word. So in these very, very classic points of deception, of doing things by surprise, and very things are made up, things are very spontaneous, things are very spur of the moment. There was no really, let's say, thought out plan, but also the point of just sometimes it's pure sheer luck, really dumb luck. And that's what looking at the story of Midway, and basically with the U.S. naval fleet and the encounter with the Japanese, how there was the point of preparation, there was a point of, that point of brilliance of, there's so many, it's like they say, twists and turns of, this person didn't listen to another person even though he should have. Even though it was logical, even though it was common sense, any other person with any kind of common sense would have, for example, listened to the radio dispatcher, would have be cautious, be careful, and not just take things for granted and be like, okay, we're safe here. For example, in Pearl Harbor. So it's like, it's very interesting in that sense of like, as things are happening, and it's very much like a person's life. Like if you look at all these different characters of all these people, you see that within any human being's life, in terms of people making really dumb decisions, people really just not trusting information, not trusting each other, not following up and doing what one can do and testing out information. People believing that nothing will ever go wrong, that life will be easy for them, that they don't need to, let's say, prepare or work or really, do your maximum effort, I suppose, would be the thing. And how in war they say to underestimate your enemy. Kind of believing that the challenge of fighting will be easy in a way. Like you don't have to really work so hard, or you don't have to really push so hard. And every single time that happens, you're always kicked in your butt. And that happened on the US side, it happened on the British or French side, it happened on many different sides, And, just full of mistakes on both sides. And also just pure dumb luck. And also it was a very interesting situation of people having simply, with this, let's say, new technology and these new tools, and really having no way of really full understanding of how to use them effectively. So it was a very interesting point of perspective of like, you just kind of have to go there and do it, and kind of just, So I do find it interesting from a strategist point of view, the point of surprise, the point of having to, how the Japanese created a really good surprise to attack a midway, like a bait, and then they were counter-baited. The whole thing was flipped because one man broke the code, and he was brilliant, and he was weird. He didn't fit in with the military command, but he did his job well, and he reported what he found, and he was dismissed. But he knew, he had the courage, he had the gall to know that he was right, and he had to pursue it. He had to show it directly to the general, and he found a way, or the admiral. So, and there's definitely stories of this, of people having, like they said in the commentary, you need to have the will to act in the moment, to be instinctive, to go for it, and to not just wait to follow orders or wait to, I don't know, to kind of freeze, I guess, or panic. You have to move, you have to act decisively. And on both sides, that happened. And it was a point of up and down. It wasn't like, there wasn't a sure way that one side was going to win or not. There are many mistakes done, there are many points of deception, there are many points of it could have gone either way. And I really relied on those points of strategy. And also really, really dumb luck, pure luck. I suppose some people want to see it as a point of divine intervention even. But certain things happen exactly And if they didn't happen like that, it would have been completely screwed over, you know. And that happened with dive bombers from the naval fleet, the U.S. naval fleet, as they were attacking the aircraft carriers for the Japanese. And they got lost in the ocean because the ocean, they didn't have any tools to navigate. All they had was a compass and a pencil, and they had to search over miles and miles and miles of ocean for the target, and no one knew exactly where it was. And they arrived at the same time as another squadron that also was lost, and they both attacked together, and one hit on this one ship destroyed it. And that was like pure luck, and there's a lot of things happened. And also another thing was the point of other planes that attacked and then they were shot down, but that point of it being a distraction, because they attacked alone initially while the others were lost, and the loss of their planes forced the defending planes to leave the area, and that allowed them to attack as well. So there's also the point of sacrifice, which is something that for me I relate most to the game of chess, where you have the pawns and the pawns are sacrificed throughout the game. And it's very much a point that happens in war for that, where someone goes distracts or someone holds someone up for some time period, and that buys the time that someone else needs in order to move, in order to escape or do an attack or something. So it's very much like, I see it as very much a physical thing, in the sense of, you know, for me, I'm in this physical 3D world, and I'm making decisions within my life, what I'm doing. And I'm doing it based on physical, calculative decisions. I'm not doing it based on hope. I'm not doing it based on like a feeling of passion or zealousness or something like that. I'm not doing it believing that it will work no matter what, but I'm doing it calculative and smart and just going for it. Because that's what works, and every time, as you see in the World War II, whenever you were emotional, whenever you were passionate, you were disoriented, you believe you could do more than what you could do. When you had hubris, you had too much pride, that led to your downfall. And there's so many mistakes made on both sides, where if some side didn't make those mistakes, things would have been completely different. So there is a lot of luck involved, but also a lot of personal will and determination, because you see also characters of people who had strong characters who were able to do what they need to do as well. The commanders, the people in charge to make decisions. It's very interesting. And so for me, I grew up in a situation where there's no way that war or fighting would ever seem smart or logical or even acceptable. I grew up basically, for me, in a feeling of world peace, and as I observe many people, let's say of my generation, they also see the same way, where I guess very ignorant in that sense of feeling like everything is in the past and growing up in a really safe, secure world. In that sense, specifically. And even with, let's say, 9/11, even with terrorist bombings, that's still just a minority of terrorist groups. It's not like a country you're fighting against or something like that. And also a really important thing to point out is that theme of racism. That theme of racism is very much within history, within who we are as people, all of humanity. And I grew up in a generation where I don't have that at all. Where I grew up among many people who didn't have that at all, because We grew up with many races, we grew up with many cultures, we grew up within a time period of it being completely illogical and stupid to be racist. Yet still that's just a proportion of people in the world, and even a proportion of people in this country, United States. There's still a fairly large portion of people in the United States who are racist. There's a very fairly large amount of people in the world who are amongst each other. And for me, even the point of realizing that, to even get to this point of having the view of racism as stupid, as something that's even could be considered normal, that was very hard fought for. That was something that was pushed for by many people. By Martin Luther King, by Gandhi, by Mandela. So many people spoke about equality. It created this space where it was taken for granted that, yeah, racism is stupid. Of course it is. Who would actually believe that? But looking at the history of humanity, or even history of United States politics or Americans, racism was very much normal. Anti-Semitism was very much normal. It was still, there. And, you could say the fight's not over. You could say many things, but it's something that to both realize that it's still very much here, and yet the possibility of living differently is here as well. So it is a point of reaping the rewards of those who fought in the past, as well as kind of taking the next step in the initiatives to bring forth the equality that's needed. The word equality, the examples, the presence, the push, and to keep pushing the points that are not being pushed upon. And that includes the money system and monetary system of this world. Because that is the last thing that Martin Luther King realized, and that what he focused on is the point of economy, people being poor. He knew that we need something like a freedom income that Andrew Yang is proposing. And whether or not that will be the final solution, I can't say. But I do know that poverty is the main threat, it's the main problem, it's the main issue, it's the main point of actually how to help people, is through money. And that is one of the final pushes, because you can see throughout the world that there are various countries who are desperate because they don't have a way out, they don't have a way to actually get strong economically. There's no way that they can do that. You have so many countries that are in debt, so many countries that are in despair, that they're just, the only outlook is to go down, down, down. And the economy is a very important point. And you can't just stand by and let that happen, because they could say war. War is always possible when you get desperate. Even if it wasn't war, it's just simply not what's best for all to allow economic inequality to happen like this. And one of the main points I push for to help others understand is that two things. One, we don't really need to rely on anyone else telling us that we can do this or not. Because money is an agreement. Money is something we agree upon. If enough people agree on a different way to do things, then that is the new way. It doesn't matter if 10 trillionaires or 10 gazillionaires says you can't do that. If you all vote for the fact that their money is meaningless and that you're gonna live with your own money, because their money is meaningless unless they actually can spend it upon someone to do something for them. But if you live with your own different money, if you live with your own different way of living, even maybe a whole different system. But however you decide to do it, you don't need permission of 10 people. You don't need the permission of 100 people. It's about who you are and what you stand for. You can agree on the principle that we stand as one people, as humanity, as this world, for the betterment of all life. We do this in the name of this high purpose, of this integrity, of this, this reason. We do this for life. That money is the value of life. Life money, if you want to call it that. And we don't have to play exactly how the games are. The rules of the game, we can change it. We have to be willing to access our benevolence, access our compassion, access our point of responsibility and sense of purpose and sense of integrity. We have to stand beyond just this one life and see the millions of lives that will benefit, all the lives of people we benefit. We have to create that new history. History is a very interesting subject, and there's a lot to learn and a lot to ground and realize, because the fantasy in TV shows and movies, it is just fantasy. It is a point of making things seem easier or harder than they actually are. Just like the delusions of certain men and people in the World War II. They had certain ideas of what they could do. They had certain ideas of what was powerful or good or whatever on both sides. But they made the mistake of believing their ideas or beliefs were real. Just like a movie, just like a TV show. Anyone can write anything. Anyone can shoot anything. Edit it. But to actually live in real time and see history unfold for real, that's the real story. That's the real things that are happening. That is the history and the story of humanity. So we need to live more in this reality, live more in this modern story, and step out of this narrative of entertainment. It's very nice and very easy to stay within the story, yet at the same time holding on to the moral of the stories. That's the value of them, for sure. But when it comes to practical implementation, what is required, it requires heart, it requires courage, it requires determination, it requires being smart, it requires being calculative, it requires sacrifice. And these are things that I realizing that's what I'm basing my life decisions on, that's what I'm pushing for. Not a dream or a fantasy, but what can I actually do? And yeah. Okay. So thank you very much. Bye.